Welcome to the fourth round of the 2020 draft. With the 109th pick, the Louisiana Gators select Mauricio Ingram, defensive lineman. With the 110th pick, the Philadelphia Express select Tevin Franklin, defensive lineman. With the 111th pick, the Cleveland Coyotes select Peyton Cross, quarterback. With the 112th pick, the Mexico City Jaguars select Joseph Beck, defensive lineman. With the 113th pick, the St. Louis Racers select Rodney Simpson, defensive lineman. With the 114th pick, the Winnipeg Devil Cats select Ernesto Mendoza, defensive lineman. With the 116th pick, the Buffalo Indians select Alfred Andrews, linebacker. With the 117th pick, the Green Bay Axemen select Brandon Ross, linebacker. With the 118th pick, the Houston Bombers select Max Fowler, wide receiver. With the 119th pick, the Miami Warriors select Dustin Ogwens, defensive back. With the 120th pick, the Kansas City Wranglers select Roger Wolf, defensive back. With the 121st pick, the Washington Senators select Yak Yak, linebacker. With the 122nd pick, the Indianapolis Gladiators select Chandler Schneider, defensive back. With the 123rd pick, the Tennessee Bloodhounds select Nicholas Martin, running back. With the 124th pick, the Pittsburgh Ironhawks select Kurt Burgess, running back. With the 125th pick, the Arizona Heat select Cameron Cannon, running back. With the 126th pick, the Dallas Lawmen select Devin Schwartz, running back. With the 127th pick, the Seattle Bruins select Miguel Clark, tight end. With the 128th pick, the Baltimore Braves select Mauricio Mills, defensive lineman. With the 129th pick, the Las Vegas Outlaws select Molly Clam, linebacker. With the 130th pick, the Denver Mountaineers select Raekwon Frazier, linebacker. With the 131st pick, the Oklahoma City Cyclones select Bryson Maxwell, linebacker. With the 132nd pick, the Boston Whalers select Leo Copeland, linebacker. With the 133rd pick, the Cincinnati Royals select Thomas High, defensive back. With the 134th pick, the Vancouver Mallards select Tyler Day, defensive back. With the 135th pick, the Montreal Terrapins select Trevor Robbins, defensive back. With the 136th pick, the Detroit Firebirds select Jamie Ruiz, defensive back. With the 137th pick, the Nebraska Thunder select Dylan Aguilar, running back. With the 138th pick, the Minnesota Pride select Jarrett Sager, running back. With the 139th pick, the Chicago Lakehawks select Marcus Patterson, running back. With the 141st pick, the Atlanta Razorbacks select Duncan Gomez, offensive lineman. With the 142nd pick, the New York Barons select Ronald Dean, offensive lineman. With the 143rd pick, the Orlando Rockets select Gerald Jefferson, offensive lineman. With the 144th pick, the Carolina Rebels select Terrence Morales, offensive lineman. This concludes the fourth round. The fifth round will commence shortly. With the 145th pick, the Louisiana Gators select Kieran Watts, wide receiver. With the 146th pick, the Philadelphia Express select Sheldon Dean, offensive lineman. With the 147th pick, the Cleveland Coyotes select Russell Wise, offensive lineman. With the 148th pick, the Mexico City Jaguars select Levi Holt, defensive lineman. With the 149th pick, the St. Louis Racers select Chad Maxwell, defensive lineman. With the 150th pick, the Winnipeg Devil Cats select Avery Gonzalez, defensive lineman. With the 151st pick, the San Francisco Sharks select Christian Brown, defensive lineman. With the 152nd pick, the Buffalo Indians select Joshua Olsen, defensive back. With the 153rd pick, the Green Bay Axemen select Matthew Scott, defensive back. With the 154th pick, the Houston Bombers select Nick Rightway, wide receiver. With the 155th pick, the Miami Warriors select Alexander Brooks, running back. With the 156th pick, the Kansas City Wranglers select Dominic Delgado, defensive back. With the 157th pick, the Washington Senators select Parker Ballard, running back. With the 158th pick, the Indianapolis Gladiators select Glenn Rice, tight end. With the 159th pick, the Tennessee Bloodhounds select Nolan Fleming, offensive lineman. With the 160th pick, the Pittsburgh Ironhawks select Nolan Cannon, offensive lineman. With the 161st pick, the Arizona Heat select Braxton Ray, defensive lineman. With the 162nd pick, the Dallas Lawmen select Carl Harper Jr., defensive lineman. With the 163rd pick, the Seattle Bruins select Keegan Moran, defensive lineman. With the 164th pick, the Baltimore Braves select Justice Harmon, defensive lineman. With the 165th pick, the Las Vegas Outlaws select Micah Merrill, linebacker. With the 166th pick, the Denver Mountaineers select Denzel Lopez, linebacker. With the 167th pick, the Oklahoma City Cyclones select Darrell Lucas, linebacker. With the 168th pick, the Boston Whalers select Trey Norton, linebacker. With the 169th pick, the Cincinnati Royals select Caleb Howard, linebacker. With the 170th pick, the Vancouver Mallards select Bryant Doyle, defensive back. With the 171st pick, the Montreal Terrapins select Melvin Sharp, running back. With the 172nd pick, the Detroit Firebirds select Dane Saunders, running back. With the 173rd pick, the Nebraska Thunder select Tyler Wilson, tight end. With the 174th pick, the Minnesota Pride select Denzel Bates, tight end. With the 175th pick, the Chicago Lakehawks select Josiah Lawrence, tight end. With the 176th pick, the Los Angeles Tide select Leon Chancellor, offensive lineman. With the 177th pick, the Atlanta Razorbacks select Philip Palmer, offensive lineman. With the 178th pick, the New York Barons select Ross Harper, offensive lineman. With the 179th pick, the Orlando Rockets select Michael Cobb, defensive lineman. With the 180th pick, the Carolina Rebels select Tyler Hughes, offensive lineman. This concludes the 5th round. The 6th round will commence shortly. With the 181st pick, the Louisiana Gators select Zachariah Whittem, kicker. With the 182nd pick, the Philadelphia Express select Randall Cola, kicker. With the 183rd pick, the Cleveland Coyotes select Reginald Cooper, kicker. With the 184th pick, the Mexico City Jaguars select Elliot Collier, kicker. With the 185th pick, the St. Louis Racers select Ian Spencer, kicker. With the 186th pick, the Winnipeg Devilcats select Omar Benson, kicker. With the 187th pick, the San Francisco Sharks select Richard Salazar, kicker. With the 188th pick, the Buffalo Indians select Josiah Tate, kicker. With the 189th pick, the Green Bay Axemen select Pedro Jefferson, punter. With the 190th pick, the Houston Bombers select Jamal Watt, punter. With the 191st pick, the Miami Warriors select Kendrick Fowler, punter. With the 192nd pick, the Kansas City Wranglers select Jesse Gronkowski, defensive lineman. With the 193rd pick, the Washington Senators select Terry Stevens, punter. With the 194th pick, the Indianapolis Gladiators select George Houston, punter. With the 195th pick, the Tennessee Bloodhounds select Jordan Diaz, punter. With the 196th pick, the Pittsburgh Ironhawks select Cade Bradley, punter. With the 197th pick, the Arizona Heat select Tyson Maitanes, defensive lineman. With the 198th pick, the Dallas Lawmen select Dominic Gonzalez, defensive lineman. With the 199th pick, the Seattle Bruins select Zachariah Douglas, defensive lineman. With the 200th pick, the Baltimore Braves select Roger Carter, linebacker. With the 201st pick, the Las Vegas Outlaws select Connor Carlson, defensive back. With the 202nd pick, the Denver Mountaineers select Evan Lewis, defensive back. With the 203rd pick, the Oklahoma City Cyclones select Damian Wenger, defensive back. With the 204th pick, the Boston Whalers select Damian Mann, running back. With the 205th pick, the Cincinnati Royals select Rudy Fries, tight end. With the 206th pick, the Vancouver Mallards select Grayson Hammond, tight end. With the 207th pick, the Montreal Terrapins select Benjamin Chambers, offensive lineman. With the 208th pick, the Detroit Firebirds select Isaiah Johnson, offensive lineman. With the 209th pick, the Nebraska Thunder select Grant Robertson, offensive lineman. With the 210th pick, the Minnesota Pride select Keaton Linton, defensive lineman. With the 211th pick, the Chicago Blackhawks select Emmanuel Idonish, linebacker. With the 212th pick, the Los Angeles Tide select Curtis O'Brien, linebacker. With the 213th pick, the Atlanta Razorbacks select Charles Lipscomb II, linebacker. With the 214th pick, the New York Barons select Thomas Gutierrez, linebacker. With the 215th pick, the Orlando Rockets select Deion Baker, defensive back. With the 216th pick, the Carolina Rebels select Cody Lucas, defensive back. This concludes the 6th round. The 7th round will commence shortly. This is the final round of the 2020 draft. With the 217th pick, the Louisiana Gators select Eugene Dean, defensive back. With the 218th pick, the Philadelphia Express select Angelo Rogers, punter. With the 219th pick, the Cleveland Coyotes select Eric Luttrell, punter. With the 220th pick, the Mexico City Jaguars select Tristan Snyder-Wine, defensive back. With the 221st pick, the St. Louis Racers select Roberto Vega, defensive back. With the 222nd pick, the Winnipeg Devil Cats select Alan Gardner, defensive back. With the 223rd pick, the San Francisco Sharks select Mike Monroe, running back. With the 224th pick, the Buffalo Indians select Zachary Krill, running back. With the 225th pick, the Green Bay Axemen select Emilio Hansen, running back. With the 226th pick, the Houston Bombers select Charles Winston, tight end. With the 227th pick, the Miami Warriors select Mauricio Ford, offensive lineman. With the 228th pick, the Kansas City Wranglers select Luke Hogan, defensive lineman. With the 229th pick, the Washington Senators select Andres Luna, offensive lineman. With the 230th pick, the Indianapolis Gladiators select Braylon Lucas, offensive lineman. With the 231st pick, the Tennessee Bloodhounds select Landon Quinn, offensive lineman. With the 232nd pick, the Pittsburgh Ironhawks select Harrison Caldwell, defensive lineman. With the 233rd pick, the Arizona Heat select Alec Hamrick, defensive lineman. With the 234th pick, the Dallas Lawmen select Dwayne Lynch, defensive lineman. With the 235th pick, the Seattle Bruins select Cade Newman, defensive back. With the 236th pick, the Baltimore Braves select Russell Hall, defensive back. With the 237th pick, the Las Vegas Outlaws select Raul Walsh, defensive back. With the 238th pick, the Denver Mountaineers select Kevin Colby, kicker. With the 239th pick, the Oklahoma City Cyclones select Clint Cudd, running back. With the 240th pick, the Boston Whalers select Luis McKinney, running back. With the 241st pick, the Cincinnati Royals select Lance Murray, running back. With the 242nd pick, the Vancouver Mallards select Robert Hamilton, kicker. With the 243rd pick, the Montreal Terrapins select Donovan Goodwin, offensive lineman. With the 244th pick, the Detroit Firebirds select Tristan Hines, offensive lineman. With the 245th pick, the Nebraska Thunder select Dakota Rodriguez, offensive lineman. With the 246th pick, the Minnesota Pride select Gustavo Moran, linebacker. With the 247th pick, the Chicago Blackhawks select Dakota Jagan, linebacker. With the 248th pick, the Los Angeles Tide select Carl Hubbard, linebacker. With the 249th pick, the Atlanta Razorbacks select Christopher Joseph, defensive back. With the 250th pick, the New York Barons select Leonardo Brewer, defensive back. With the 251st pick, the Orlando Rockets select Eric Bates, offensive lineman. With the final pick of the 2020 draft, the Carolina Rebels select Brandon Barnes, defensive back.
Thank you for watching the 2020 ALEXIS Football Draft. We apologize for the lateness of this draft, but now look forward to starting the second season ever of the ALEXIS Football League. To begin the 2020 season, we will showcase 2 all-star games of Buffalo versus Houston and Dallas versus Las Vegas. We look forward to starting the preseason and hope you will be there as well.